A husband's ambition blinds him to the sacrifices he's making, choosing loyalty to his boss over his wife at a pivotal moment. When tension erupts into unexpected twists, buried truths resurface, and a single phone call threatens everything. Will love survive betrayal, or is it already too late? Hi everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So, let's begin. Imagine you're at a party. Laughter fills the air, the music hums in the background, and drinks are flowing freely. Everything seems perfect until one small moment shatters a relationship forever. This is the story of a husband, his wife, and a choice that no one saw coming, except perhaps his boss. In today's gripping tale, we dive into a story shared on Reddit that took the internet by storm. A married couple attends a work party where tensions between personal loyalty and professional ambition come to a head. The wife, expecting support from her husband, quickly realizes that his loyalty might not lie where she believed. When a casual conversation turns into a heated disagreement involving his boss, the husband makes a decision. He takes his boss's side. At first, it seems harmless. After all, what's a minor disagreement at a party? But sometimes, it's the small moments that reveal the deepest cracks. Words are exchanged, trust is tested, and the evening spirals into a confrontation that neither of them can forget. By the time they leave the party, the damage has been done. The wife, hurt and disillusioned, begins to question not just her husband's choice that night, but his entire sense of loyalty. How could someone she built a life with prioritize workplace politics over their marriage? And more importantly, what does it mean for their future together? As for the husband, he never imagined that one evening would lead to a crossroads between love and ambition. Now, he's forced to confront the fallout and the painful reality that some choices have consequences far beyond what we can predict. This story is filled with twists, emotional stakes, and a powerful reminder that loyalty is often tested in the most unexpected ways. But what exactly happened next? Was there a way back for this couple? Or had the marriage reached a breaking point that couldn't be repaired? Stay tuned as we unravel the truth behind this heart-wrenching story that left Reddit readers divided and questioning their own relationships. It all started as a regular night. The wife, let's call her Emily, had spent hours preparing for the work party. She wanted to make a good impression, not just for herself, but for her husband, Mark, too. He had been talking about this event for weeks. His boss would be there, along with key people from the office. This was the kind of networking opportunity that could lead to a promotion. Emily knew how important it was to him, and she wanted to be supportive. The venue buzzed with energy. Co-workers chatted in small clusters, laughter echoing as glasses clinked. Mark, usually composed, was a little more animated than usual, perhaps from the drinks or the pressure to impress. Emily stood by his side, smiling politely, until she found herself caught in a conversation that would change everything. It started innocently enough, a casual debate about work-life balance, one of those topics that tend to surface after a few drinks. Mark's boss, an older man with a commanding presence, argued that success demands sacrifice. Family comes second, he insisted, if you want to get ahead. Emily, without hesitation, chimed in. But what's the point of success if you lose the people you care about along the way? Her tone was calm, but her conviction was clear. The boss chuckled dismissively. That's a nice thought, but in the real world, you have to choose. Mark shifted uncomfortably. There was a moment, just a flicker, where he glanced at Emily before turning back to his boss. I mean, he's got a point, Mark said, his voice quieter now, but steady. Emily blinked, caught off guard. Was he serious? She searched his face for any sign of jest, but all she saw was someone trying too hard to fit in. Wait, you actually agree with that? She asked, her words soft but loaded with meaning. It's complicated, Mark replied, brushing it off. It's not that simple. But it felt simple to Emily. In that moment, it wasn't about the conversation. It was about something bigger, something far more personal. And as she stood there, the weight of his words pressed heavy on her chest. Trust is built one brick at a time, but it only takes a single crack to weaken the foundation. And this was more than a crack. As the car door slammed shut, the silence between Emily and Mark was louder than any argument they could have had. The drive home stretched on, the tension sitting thick in the space between them. Emily stared out the window, her mind racing with everything left unsaid. Mark kept his eyes on the road, gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual, the glow of passing streetlights reflecting in his tense expression. Finally, she broke the silence. So, that's how you really feel? Her voice was low, but the hurt was unmistakable. Mark sighed, not wanting to get into it. I don't know why you're so upset. It was just a conversation. It wasn't just a conversation, Mark. You took his side. You didn't even think twice. He shifted in his seat, frustration bubbling up. You don't get it. He's my boss. I have to keep a good relationship with him. You can't challenge people like that in front of everyone. Emily turned to face him, her eyes sharp. You don't think I realize that? But there's a difference between being professional and completely agreeing with something that goes against everything we believe in. What about us? What about our family? Doesn't that matter? Mark rubbed his temple, the weight of the night settling on his shoulders. Of course it matters. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Bigger than it needs to be? Emily repeated, incredulous. Mark, do you know how it felt standing there? Hearing you say that? You made me feel small. Like I didn't matter. Like what we've built together didn't matter. The car pulled into their driveway, but neither moved to get out. The stillness of their home contrasted with the storm raging inside them. Mark exhaled slowly, his defenses cracking just a bit. I didn't mean to hurt you, Emily. I was trying to play it smart. That's all. Her eyes softened for a moment, but the sting remained. There's playing it smart, and there's standing up for what's right. Where's the line, Mark? How many times do you cross it before you lose sight of it altogether? He had no answer, and as they sat there in the dark, the silence between them grew heavier still. Some wounds aren't visible, but they cut just as deep. The days that followed were marked by an uneasy silence. Emily and Mark went through the motions of their lives, but something had shifted between them. Conversations were shorter, glances held longer, but filled with unspoken words. The warmth they once shared felt cold, replaced by a distance that neither knew how to bridge. One evening, as Emily sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, she noticed a notification from a Reddit thread she had been following. Stories of other couples grappling with loyalty, trust, and ambition filled the comments. She couldn't help but wonder how many marriages had unraveled over moments just like theirs, small choices that grew into insurmountable divides. Mark walked in, his tie loosened and his face drawn from another long day at work. He paused, looking at her as though searching for something, then sat down across from her. The air between them felt fragile, like glass that might shatter with the wrong word. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice careful, almost cautious. Emily placed her phone aside and folded her hands in her lap. "I've been thinking." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "About what?" "About that night. About us." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I need to know, was that the real you? The man who agrees with someone like your boss? Or the man I married, who believes in standing by the people he loves, no matter what?" Mark's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with conflict. "It's not that simple, Emily. You think it's easy balancing everything, work, expectations, pressure. I'm trying to build something for us, for our future." Emily's voice trembled with emotion. "But what's the point of a future if it costs us everything now? You didn't just take his side, you dismissed me. And I'm scared that the next time something like this happens, you'll choose him again, or someone else, and I'll be left wondering where I fit in your life." Her words hung heavy between them. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. He wanted to say the right thing, to fix the fracture between them, but the weight of his choices held him back. And then the sharp chime of his phone broke the tension. A message from his boss lit up the screen. Emily's eyes caught the name, her heart sinking as the final crack in their foundation deepened. Mark's eyes flicked to his phone screen, the glow of the message illuminating his face for a split second. He hesitated before flipping it over, as if hiding it could undo the damage already done. But it was too late. Emily had seen it. The name of his boss flashed like a warning sign in her mind, the reminder of everything that had driven them apart. "Are you going to answer that?" Her voice was calm, but the edge in it was impossible to miss. Mark shook his head. "It's not important." "Not important?" Emily repeated, her chest tightening. "That's what you always say, every time." "But it always is, isn't it? Every call, every message, every late night. It's all important. To you, at least." "Come on, Emily," Mark said, rubbing his temples. "This isn't fair. You're making this into something it's not." She felt the words hit her like a punch. "Not fair? You don't think it's fair that I want to know why you keep prioritizing him, them, over me? Why every time you have to choose between work and us, I'm the one who loses?" He leaned back, a tired sigh escaping. "It's just how it is right now. I'm doing this for us, for a better life." Emily's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "You keep saying that, but I don't see it. All I see is you slipping further away. Every message from him, every just one more meeting, every time you don't stand by me when it matters. Those aren't sacrifices for us. They're choices, and they're choices you keep making." The room seemed to shrink as the tension thickened. Mark opened his mouth to respond, but a sharp knock at the door cut him off. They both froze. "Who could that be?" Emily whispered, her pulse quickening. Mark frowned, rising slowly. "I don't know." As he moved to the door, Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Was it work-related? A friend? Someone she didn't expect? But when Mark opened it, the figure standing there left her breathless. It wasn't just a surprise. It was someone who would force every hidden truth into the light, and neither of them was prepared for what would come next. When the door opened, Emily's breath caught in her throat. Standing on the porch, with an unreadable expression and a firm stance, was Mark's boss. His presence felt larger than life, as if the weight of their entire conversation from that night at the party had come back to haunt them. "Evening, Mark," the man greeted, his tone far too casual for the tension crackling in the air. "I was just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd drop by to discuss a new opportunity. Couldn't wait." Emily's eyes flicked to Mark, whose jaw clenched so tightly she thought he might crack a tooth. "Now's not a good time," Mark said, his voice low, strained. The boss ignored him, stepping forward as if he owned the space. His eyes landed on Emily, sharp and knowing. "Ah, Emily," he said smoothly, "it's good to see you again. I hope there are no hard feelings from the other night. You know how these things are. Business over sentiment, right?" She felt her stomach churn, the casual dismissal of everything she stood for reigniting her anger. Before she could stop herself, the words poured out. "Is that how you've always lived your life? Putting business first, no matter the cost?" He smirked. "That's how you win. Sacrifice a little now, reap the rewards later. People come and go. Success is permanent." Mark stepped between them, his eyes blazing. "That's enough." But his boss only laughed, a deep, condescending sound. "See, Mark, this is exactly why you need to stay focused. Emotions, relationships, they'll hold you back. Don't lose your edge now." Emily felt the room spin as Mark's silence stretched. Was this who he was becoming? Someone willing to trade love and loyalty for power and approval? But then something shifted. "No," Mark said firmly, "I'm done." His boss blinked, the first flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Mark continued, his voice steady. "I won't sacrifice my marriage, my values, or my future for a career built on someone else's terms. I'm done letting you control my life." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the boss gave a slow, mocking nod. "Your loss." He turned and left without another word. As the door clicked shut, Emily exhaled, her heart pounding. She looked at Mark, a question in her eyes. "Are you sure?" He reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I've never been more sure." But just as relief washed over her, his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from work. It was a name from the past, one Emily never expected to see. And the story, it seemed, wasn't over yet. Mark stared at the phone screen as it buzzed in his hand. His brow furrowed as Emily leaned closer, reading the name that had suddenly reappeared in their lives. Sarah. A name from years ago, someone from Mark's past who had once been more than just a friend. "Why is she calling you?" Emily asked, her voice cautious, the sting of recent wounds making her more guarded than say. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair as the phone stopped vibrating. "I have no idea. We haven't talked in forever." Emily watched his face, searching for any trace of dishonesty. But what she saw was exhaustion and something else, determination. "Are you going to call her back?" "No," he said firmly, turning the phone off and placing it face down on the table. "Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. What matters is here, you, us." The weight of his words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Emily felt the tension in her chest begin to ease, but trust, once fractured, wasn't something that could be mended in an instant. She crossed her arms, her eyes never leaving his. "Mark, we can't keep doing this. I need to believe that when I come second in someone else's world, I'll always be first in yours." He nodded slowly, understanding sinking in. "You're right. I've been chasing things that don't matter the way I thought they did. Success, promotions, approval from people like him. None of it means anything if I lose you in the process." The room felt lighter, though not entirely free of the past. Emily softened, reaching out to touch his hand. "It's not too late, but it's going to take time to rebuild what we lost." Mark laced his fingers with hers, the touch grounding them both. "I'll do whatever it takes. I want us to be strong again. I want to be the man you can count on, not just in words, but in actions." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Then let's start small. No more answering to people who don't care about our happiness. No more letting someone else's ambition define our future." "Deal," he whispered. That night they sat together on the couch, no longer divided by the silence that had once seemed insurmountable. The phone remained forgotten on the table, its screen dark. Outside the wind howled, but inside the storm had passed. Mark knew there would be challenges ahead, and Emily understood that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. But they had made a choice, together, a choice to fight for the life they had built, to protect what mattered most, and to remember that loyalty isn't something you promise, it's something you prove. And as they held on to each other, stronger and more certain than before, the cracks between them began to heal, because sometimes the hardest lessons come from the smallest moments, and sometimes those moments are exactly what it takes to remind you where your heart truly belongs.